Hello, Guitar Smarts fans. Before you check out this podcast, I want to make you aware of a cool new place where you can interact with other Guitar Smarts listeners. It's a Facebook group called the Guitar Geek Hangout. That's where we hang out and talk about all things guitar. So, if you like the Guitar Smarts podcast, come and chat with Kiran and myself over in the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook. Maybe check out some pre-podcast clips and even get involved in asking and answering lots of questions from the other page dwellers. Hope to see you there. One of the things I love about Sting is that he's not afraid to do quite complex things with his music, or not afraid to kind of push the boundaries. I mean, 3 of the songs on that album are in odd time signatures. Was it Love is Stronger Than Justice, I think? And that's in 7/8. 7 Days is in 5/4. St. Augustine in Hell is in 7/8. Who does that? Who does that anymore? Who in music anymore decides to do things in odd meters? Greetings, welcome back to the Guitar Smarts podcast. We are here with another episode of the pod. This week, Kiran and I talking about our Desert Island discs. Each of us have chosen the 5 albums that we would be happy to listen to for the rest of eternity, knowing that we could listen to nothing else. We've considered everything we've cast our ears on over the many years we've been avid music fans, and although this list could change depending on the time of day, they will always be there or thereabouts in our list of favourite albums. Play along with us, make your own list. Head on over to the Guitar Geek Hangout to let us know what albums you would have chosen for your personal stay on a desert island for the rest of eternity. Anyway, the usual housekeeping. As always, remember to like and subscribe to this podcast so you won't miss the next show. We've got a Linktree in the description of this podcast. That provides you with quick and easy links to our podcast page on Spotify, the backing track solo challenges we've recently produced, and some excellent Spotify playlists related to previous shows. But if you click on one link only, make it the Guitar Smarts Guitar Geek Hangout page on Facebook, where you can get to know many other guitar nerds just like us. You can also find a link there to our Buy Me a Coffee page, where you can donate to the show, which is entirely self-funded. And thank you to our recent contributor Graham Like. We certainly like your contribution and remain eternally grateful. Thanks, Graham. Anyway, that's about enough from me. Let's get to it. Hey, Kiran, my old mate, how you keeping? Had a good week?
I am good. I'm good. It's all right. It's been all right so far, but I tell you what, autumn is definitely here. It's October now. It's raining. It's miserable outside, but inside it is warm and it is filled with guitar dreams.
So much are coming to reality. From, you know, I mean, I've had a bit of a mad one for me this week. I was looking on eBay the other week, and I was like just looking for guitar bodies and things. Because you remember we were talking about potentially building a parts caster? It kind of escalated.
Escalated, to say the least, my friend. So it started off like I think the conversation was this Squier telly that I've bought. I mean, I really like it, but I think the frets might be a little bit too narrow and thin on it. So I'm thinking about maybe getting it refretted with bigger frets. That's how this started. Let's be clear. We've gone from fret wire. We've gone from fret wire to something very, very different. So where are we at now?
Oh, we're at an entirely new guitar build. Yeah.
Fantastic. That escalated quickly. It really did.
Yeah, I was kind of like, well, I just saw this body. I saw this body for sale, like the second-hand older
guitar body, just to be clear.
Guitar body. Sorry, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
It wasn't some kind of mafia hangout.
Yeah, I thought if I can get this for like, 50 quid or something like that, then maybe, and I did. I got it for about 50 quid, and it's flawless. It's absolutely flawless. Perfectly finished. Strata body in gold. Really nice gold sparkle. And I thought,
it looks awesome.
Yeah.
How did you get that for 50 quid?
I don't know. I'm pretty certain it would probably be like a couple of £100 brand new. And this guy selling it on eBay just had it pretty poorly kind of set up for sale, so it wasn't being bid on too much. And I managed to pick it up, and I thought, I've got a bit of birthday money as well and some Amazon vouchers. I'm going to see if I can just get all this kit together pretty cheaply and try and put something together that's at about an equivalent spec to my Mexican kind of Strat that I've got, and I've managed to be able to do it pretty much, just using my birthday money and these Amazon vouchers. But the biggest steal I got is my good friend Connor has sold me an old set of lace sensor pickups. The gold lace sensors, and he's only taken 50 quid for them, which is
the Clapton,
the Clapton ones, yeah. So not the mid boost, but just the pickups. So that's what it's going to get. So it's going to end up being like this maple net gold, like a Strat Plus kind of, basically. That's what it's going to end up being. But
Mate.
Yeah.
You've done blindingly well there. You've put an absolute blinder. Yeah. Connor, I don't know what you're thinking, man. 50 quid. I mean, I know Matt's a lovely guy and all, and you guys are friends and whatever, but 50 quid for a set of lace sensors.
It feels slightly like I'm taking advantage of him, but the thing is he said he doesn't really care about the money. He said, just give me first shout on them if you change them out again at another point. So I was like, of course, no problem at all.
Nice.
So they should arrive in the post anytime soon, along with everything else.
I love that. You're caretaking them for him for like an amount of 50 quid. Yeah. At some point, they might migrate back to him. At some point, who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
Have those pickups played some world stages? Because Connor's a serious
no, I don't
musician,
think so.
Man.
He's done some good gigs. He's done some big gigs out there. He's been James Morrison's guitarist and various other people, and done some good gigs. But I think he's always changed his Clapton Strat lace sensors out for the noiseless. He prefers the more recent noiseless pickups. So, because when I met him at ACM, he had the Clapton Strat with the lace sensors, and then around the same time, he bought another Clapton Strat, a black one, with the noiseless pickups, and he preferred that, so he changed out the lace sensors. So I think these lace sensors have basically been sat around for about 20 years,
Yeah, the jury's out. The jury's out on those ones. I've listened to some A/B kind of recordings of people taking the lace sensors out, putting the noiseless in. I mean, there's very little in it, but I mean, well, from what I can gauge from watching videos and stuff. But I mean, equally accomplished pickups. Really, really good set of pickups. Hey, look. Speaking of which, look what's behind me.
What's behind you?
What's in the box? What's in the box?
Oh my God.
So it's like a moment from Seven, isn't it? Hold on a minute. Do you want me to go and get what's in the box?
I've just noticed there's a guitar case behind you with a label on it. Did you go to Guitar Village the other day? Is that what it is?
No, I did go to Guitar Village the other day. It's a tweed case. It's a tweed case.
Tweed case as well. Okay. Okay, so Kieran's now, for our listeners, Kieran's now wandering over to his guitar case and opening up something brand new. I don't know what it is. Have you bought yours? Is it demos? It's a Clapton Strat. It's a black Clapton Strat. Yeah. No, I was talking listeners through what I was seeing, and I think I'm seeing a Clapton Strat.
You are seeing Clapton Strat.
Clapton Strat?
Yeah,
you setting
it's
it up?
not mine.
Oh,
yeah, it's not mine. I know, I'm such a tease, aren't I? No, it's not mine. Sorry, my audio went horrible there. I've just set it up for him. But look, sacrilege among sacrilege.
The wooden block.
I'm holding up the wooden block.
Is
the
he
wooden
taking
block
it
is
out?
no more. Yeah, I've done it. I've set it up with a floating trem for him.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, because he's got a gig coming up. He's doing how about this for a Depp gig? He's doing a Pink Floyd, like a fairly prestigious Pink Floyd tribute band.
I heard.
You've heard his,
Well, because he's bought a Helix for it, and he's messaged me like saying, "Can you give me some tips?" And I'm like, "Are you ready?
Are you ready for the wisdom?
Ready for the deluge of
the wisdom is coming?
This is the stuff you can do, sunshine."
Let me talk to you about. So
I've been routinely blowing his mind with what you can actually do with the Helix. And he's like, nice. Oh, really? I get it now. Yeah. So, see, that's the thing. The Helix, it's not about the sounds. It's not about the tones. It's not like, well, a Helix doesn't sound like an amp. So like anyone who works or uses a Helix don't care whether or not it sounds like a real amp or not. It's about the stuff you can't do with real amps, the flexibility it gives you, the programming, the ability to crossfade between two completely different rigs with your expression pedal. Things like that. There's flexibilities in the Helix that you cannot achieve without it. That's why the Helix is so great. The tones are great, obviously, but that's almost by the by when you start thinking about oh man, I've got some serious flexibility here, in my rig because of this. Things I can't do, change. I can switch between two entirely different rigs if I want. There's so much you can do. That's the thing. That's the discovery you've got to make with modelling stuff. It's not about trying to sound like an amp in a room. It's about having flexibility in your sound that you can have consistent from gig to gig. That's the selling point. But anyway, we digress.
I think you just did an entire advert for Helix there. You should be sponsored by Line 6.
It should be, really. It should be. And also, I've got to say, the Helix has been out for about 7-8 years now. It's about time Line 6 brought something new out, because Fender have just brought out the Tone Master Pro, which is the modelling thing. The Neural DSP have just updated theirs with new software, etc. Obviously, Kemper's, I think, just done some updates too. The Fractal FM9 is very recent in the last couple of years, and that's super. So Helix is still holding its own, but it's old now. It is getting old. We're really ready for the Helix 2. So let's see what Line 6 do in the next couple of years. But anyway.
Interesting. I still think they've probably got market leadership with it, though. I still think it's the number one, isn't it?
I think bang for buck, it's up there with the best, for sure. But anyway. Right, Matt, shall we crack on with this week's chat?
Yeah, let's. I'm looking forward to this one. This was an agonising one. This was almost torturous in its fun factor. It was
that's why
equally bittersweet. Yeah,
that's why I did it, because I knew it'd be
to mess with our heads this week.
Okay, so this week we have decided that we are going to choose and talk about our 5 Desert Island discs. Okay, everyone knows the concept, Desert Island discs. It's the albums you would listen to and take with you if you were to be stranded on a desert island for the rest of your days. What albums could you not live without? What albums would you happily listen to on repeat and never get bored of? I mean, you might get bored of, maybe, but you've got 5. You've got some variety at least.
It would take you longer to get bored, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think we've both got basically like 5 Desert Island discs and 5 kind of honourable mentions, or like a 10 to 6 kind of countdown, right?
Yeah. I mean, I hate this question normally, right? When people find out that I play music or play in bands or whatever, and they're not musicians, one of the things that they assume is that I know everything about music, like, so that I'll always get picked to answer the music questions in a pub quiz or whatever. It's like, you're a musician, you must know everything about every band ever, which is clearly not the case. And then once they've kind of got over that bit, then they're like, what's your favourite album? What's your favourite song? And I always avoid that question, because it's kind of like, it just depends on the day and the mood and all of that. So yeah, I enjoyed and struggled with this one, because it is like trying to choose your favourite child, isn't it, really?
Oh, for sure. But I've got to admit, I'm lucky, because I said that's what we're going to do this week, because I was listening to some music and I was like, yeah, this is definitely on my desert island. We should. So I was kind of inspired. Fair play. Anyway.
Fair play. So before we go into this, and we need to get into it because we've got basically 20 albums to go through, some of which we'll mention just very briefly, and we'll do sort of like a playlist on, and some we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail. But how have you approached this, right? Because obviously, we're really into guitar playing, right? So there's a viewpoint to look at this from purely seminal pieces of guitar work or tone. Yeah. And then there's kind of like the other flip side of it, which is just bookmarks and milestones in your life, right?
Yeah.
Which is the other great thing about music, isn't it? Yeah, nostalgia, memories, be they happy, be they sad, be they commemorative, whatever. Yeah. Anyway, I was just interested by that. And as I was going through this list, I was like, man, I could create a different list for each one. But this isn't the point. The point is, you've only got space, 5 albums as you wash up on a desert island in your kit bag. So approach it how you will, I guess. Yeah,
so you're absolutely right. Mine's definitely a mixture.
You're rethinking your list now.
Exactly, yeah. So mine's definitely a mixture of nostalgia, things I love, things I want to hear. There's a lot of stuff in there that I can talk about at a kind of cognitive level, about tone and about why I think musically I'd want to listen to that. But really, at the end of the day, when it comes to it, this is stuff I've loved for a long time that I get a huge amount of listening pleasure out of now in the present, and gives me a lot of memories and reminds me of a lot of things in my life, memories, where the music came from that are important to me. It's all those things about music and guitar playing and guitar sounds and the sound of people making music. That's the very basis of, I think, every choice really in my list.
Love it.
It's kind of like a melting pot of all those things.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. Yeah, I think I've gone similar. I think I've gone similar.
All right.
Right.
Well, let's do a quick rundown of 10 to 6. Okay. I'm going to start. Here's my 10 to 6. Right. So at number 10,
go.
B.B. King, Live at the Regal. Okay.
Beautiful.
Number 9, this will surprise you. George Michael, Listen Without Prejudice.
Great album.
Yeah. Number 8, Toto 4.
Of course.
Number 7, Michael Jackson's Bad.
Oh, I wasn't thinking you were going to go for Bad, but yeah, equally epic album.
I prefer Bad to Thriller. I'm much.
Yeah.
For me, it's a better. It had more number ones. And then number 6, Eric Clapton's From the Cradle. I wouldn't take that one. That gets tipped by something else.
Oh, mate.
There we go. That's my 10 to 6.
What a list. And I'd love to spend a session talking about all of those in 10 because they are fantastic, fantastic choices, man. I would quite happily, if I was washed up on a desert island with just those 5, I'd still be really happy.
Yes, me too, to be fair.
Do you know, I'd still be really happy. Great choices. And I forgot George Michael, man. I used to fall asleep listening to George Michael when I was, a teenager. Anyway, different conversation. Right, are you ready?
Make a joke for my... But anyway.
Not with George Michael. To George Michael. It's a difference. Wasn't being groomed by an 80s pop icon.
Move on.
That I know of. Right, okay. Here we go. Right, so coming in at number 10. This one probably will surprise you. It's a bit of a random one, but this was just such a seminal album in my youth. Counting Crows, August and Everything After.
I love that album too. Yeah.
Coming in at my number 9, again, just every track is a brilliant piece of musicianship and songmanship. Great songs. Are You Gonna Go My Way? Lenny Kravitz. Love that album.
Bravo.
That album. Next one, very much of my teenage years again, and just reminds me of headbanging with my friends. There's a lot of songs on there like that, and that's the album 10 by Pearl Jam.
Ooh.
And then coming in at what would be my number 6.
Sorry to interrupt this conversation. However, if you're a regular listener, then you should definitely come and join us on our Facebook group, the Guitar Geek Hangout. Go and join the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook now before you carry on with the podcast.
Eric Clapton, From the Cradle.
No way.
I kid you not. And I wrestled with this. And I tell you what, this morning after I did this school run with the kids, I listened to it just to double check. And that opening tone on Blues Before Sunrise is visceral.
It is.
It hit me to my core, and I was like, no, this has got to make the island. This is just obscenely good. And I started flicking through the rest of the tracks, and I was like, this album is just epic, and I can't believe it missed out, but it did, and there'll be a lot of people shouting going, that should have been on the list, chaps.
Maybe I think, I don't care because I'm happy with what I've got on my 5, and I think some of them are obvious. I think a lot of our listeners, maybe yourself as well, Kiran, might find my choices fairly, if you've listened to our podcast before, I think there's some obvious choices, but I don't care. I'm going to talk about them because I love them. So,
Yeah, I think so too. I think you are going to see some predictable choices, but they are predictable for me because we've probably talked about them before on the podcast, and think that probably says something insofar as these are probably for us evergreen albums that have stood the test of time. You can keep revisiting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course you can over-listen to and need a rest from it, but still, you keep coming back to them, and there's a reason for that.
For sure.
Which is why I think I've chosen this list.
Yeah. I think one of the key things for me is my 5. If there's anything that's consistent about them, is I think they all kind of either raise the bar or hit the top standard for kind of musical performance, musicians' performance. Everything about them was just top class, superlative musical performance. So that's what I love the most about music. For me, I've always said this. I've realised as I, have grown older, as you kind of, when you're a kid, you kind of talk about what music you're into. I'm into blues, I'm into rock, whatever like that. For me, it all boils down to the same thing, which I love any music that sounds like musicians in a room playing together and enjoying playing off of each other. If it sounds like people making music, then I love it. That's my favourite kind of thing. So, okay, I'm going to kick off. First album choice for me. This is a Desert Island disc. It's, and I reckon this is predictable, but it's Sting, 10 Summoners Tales.
Nice.
Yeah.
Tell me why. I mean, great album, man.
There's a number of reasons. It's a bit of a nostalgic album for me. This is like one of the first albums I ever owned. In fact, I think my dad bought it on tape, and I used to love listening to it. It would get played in the car a lot. The songs are just incredible. The production is like nothing else. It is so slick, so beautifully performed, and everything just feels so kind of coherent. I don't know if you kind of know what I mean. It's like the sound of everything in that album is so clean, but it doesn't sound overproduced. It's fantastic. It's so high in information, like harmonic information. One of my favorite things about it is, one of the things I love about Sting really is that he's not afraid to do quite complex things with his music. Not afraid to kind of push the boundaries. I mean, 3 of the songs on that album are in odd time signatures.
Yes.
Love is stronger than. Was it Love is Stronger Than Justice? I think, which is like a country one. That's in 7/8 for the most part. 7 Days is in 5/4. Saint Augustine in Hell is in 7/8 as well. Who does that? Who does that anymore? Who in music anymore decides to do things in odd meters and make it really work? I mean, 7 Days feels natural. The groove is incredible, doesn't it? But it's in 5/4.
That's insane.
And then he also does It's Probably Me on this, which he'd actually released the year before this album came out. The first recording of that was written with Eric Clapton and Michael Kamen and David Sanborn, and they'd done it for, I think, a Lethal Weapon film.
That's right.
And then he re-recorded it in for this album. But the first chord of that song is actually it's a minor major chord. It's a chord with the minor third in it and the major seventh. Which again, so this is he's taking chords out of the melodic minor scale now, not the major scale, and starting it with this really kind of it sounds like it's the James Bond chord kind of thing. And then as the verse progresses, it goes back into the major 7. And I was like, this album is like this all the way through. It's so full of harmonic information, but he still makes it all work with this pop sensibility that I don't think anybody else does that. Maybe Stevie Wonder, Jacob Collier these days is maybe like that. It's astounding to me that, somebody can do that with their music, is to keep it so interesting harmonically and still make it listenable pop music that would work on the radio. I can listen to that album all the way through every day, no problem, and just always feel like I'm interested, So that's the first one for me, Sting, 10 Summoners Tales.
Well, mate, great choice. I mean, Shape of My Heart is just an epic song.
Yeah.
Used as part of the soundtrack for the film Leon, which was where I first heard that track, and then obviously accessed that album through that. And then, you're right, It's Probably Me featured, I think, all the way through those Lethal Weapon films. That Clapton tone and lick on that is from that album. Great choice, man. What an album.
Cool, man. Right, over to you.
Right, buddy. Mine is going to be a predictable one, I'm afraid, for my first choice, but it is because it it is an evergreen album for me. It's a modern classic. Every track on it is brilliant, and each track you can listen to from a guitarist perspective and nerd out on the guitar and what's going on, or you can choose to completely ignore that and just listen to the song because it's a great pop song. And so I love that different ways to access that album depending on what mood you're in. And that's Continuum by John Mayer, which is, you know, it's had a huge influence on I think probably both our kind of playing over the years, at least in terms of drawing bits of inspiration and kind of figuring out what he's doing and covering some of these songs. But yeah, and there's so many quintessential John Mayer test of time tracks on there, which I wonder when I will get bored of them. And yet I don't. Yeah. And yet I don't. Yeah. It's staggering. So yeah.
Any particular favourites of that album?
Oh, mate. Well, so Gravity obviously holds a special place in my heart. Yeah. It was the song that I used to sing my eldest son to sleep with when he was a baby, because you know what it's like when you're a new parent. You're desperately trying to get these kids off to sleep, and when they're that young, you know, it's normal. But I refused to sing nursery rhymes. I didn't refuse to sing nursery rhymes. I occasionally did, but time and time again, the song that made him just drift off to sleep was Gravity. Yeah, and that lasted for the early years of his life, to the point where that song is now one of his favourite songs. Now he's 10 years old, so 10 years later, but he still remembers that song as one of the songs from his very younger years. And he won't remember obviously being back to a baby when I used to sing him to sleep, but it's that kind of monumental for him as a song and for me. And bloody hell, if I could sing that every night and still not get bored of it,
well, there you go.
Whilst tired as a parent of a newborn baby, I think that probably says something about that song. So yeah, I think, you know, that's an epic song. Slow Dancing as well. I mean, that's become my test track for testing out position 4 on any single coil guitar, just to see what that says something in itself, right? A song that is now become the test track for trying out any Strat type guitar to see how it sounds in that position.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a pretty cool thing.
That might be a perfect song. It might be one of a handful of perfectly written songs for which I think there are only a few ever. That might be up there on the list, potentially.
There you go.
It's incredible. I love that album too. It's not actually on my list. I do love that album. I actually credit that album with reigniting my love for guitar back in about 2006 when it came out. Around that time, I was after I'd finished music college. I decided not to be a musician as a full-time career. I wanted to go back into engineering because I decided that if I become a musician as a job, actually, I might end up not loving playing guitar anymore. And you know, because it becomes a chore and I have to take gigs that I don't want to take to earn money. And that's what I was worried about. And I thought I'd rather keep it something I love. And I kind of went off the boil after spending 3 years just full-time studying guitar. And then it was getting into John Mayer and listening to that album that made me think, no, it's still okay to be a guitarist.
It's still like, basically. Wow. Wow. That's pretty profound, man. I remember, I'd forgotten, but I remember you telling me that story before now that you've said it. And that makes that album even more special. I mean, there's a track on there called Stop This Train, which I keep revisiting. It's such a philosophical piece of songwriting, really tastefully done, talking about life and you know, the inevitability of this journey that we're on. I mean, there's some great stuff, and love or hate John Mayer as an individual, and his kind of well-famed ego and all of that kind of stuff. That guy can play guitar and can write a really meaningful song. So there you go. It's got to come to the island. It's got to come to the island.
Yeah. Fantastic. Excellent choice, mate. So my next choice is a probably predictable one, considering Clapton From the Cradle, isn't there? But this is the album that got me playing guitar, and it's Unplugged. Clapton Unplugged.
Nice.
1993, I think my dad got it on CD probably the year after. It was his record collection. He had Slow Hand in his record collection. That's what made me interested in guitar. Not listening to it, looking at it, because it's just a picture of Blackie, pretty much, right? Him holding Black. I'm like, that's cool. And then he got Clapton Unplugged, and I listened to that, and it's just the thing that astounds me about that album is it's probably one of the greatest selling albums of all time. It's a single performance.
Yeah,
Clapton Unplugged wasn't a tour. It wasn't something like that. It was something that he did with MTV, recorded in one afternoon at I think Bray Studios.
Place in Windsor, wasn't it? Or
that's
Bray,
right, yeah, near Maidenhead or Windsor, something like that. Yeah. And it was just one gig, just one show. And everyone's playing is incredible. I love Clapton's solos and stuff. There's a fire in his playing, which is hard to kind of put your finger on it. And I think it comes out the most in Old Love when he does that incredible guitar solo. But What I love about it is everyone's playing is so fantastic. You know, Chuck Leavell's piano playing is just stunning the whole time you're listening to that album. It's just a perfect performance of those songs, perfectly instrumented, sounds brilliant. It was clearly done to the perfect sized audience as well, you know, because the size of the audience in the recording feels appropriate for the way the music feels. It's just for me, it's just a perfect album. And favourite songs of that for me are Old Love, Layla, Alberta, I think. It's just perfect. Again, one I could listen to front to back, no problem.
I can't believe it didn't make it to my 10 list. I did think about it.
Make it to mine, so I think we're equal there.
And I did think about it for all the reasons that you mentioned. My dad had the Crossroads double album of Eric Clapton growing up, and which I loved. And then when this came out, I watched it. I just watched it on MTV and had a VHS copy of it that I soon wore out. And just accessing Layla in that way and hearing it done that way, that then became, I know it's sacrilege to say, but it became my quintessential version of Layla versus the original Derek and the Dominoes recording, which I know is kind of a strange thing to say. And then that version of Old Love, I still prefer to the original album version of it, just because it's so beautifully played. And that album for me is one of my absolute go-to albums for testing up the setup of a hi-fi in terms of soundstage and the placement of the musicians, so that when you close your eyes, you can almost see that scene of where those different instrumentalists are positioned in that soundstage in front of you. Yeah. And it also helps me EQ the speakers in terms of the tonality of the acoustic guitars, because without getting too into it, you can angle your speakers in a certain way to create the right kind of balance and room reflections. But the sound of his acoustic guitar is such a way on that album that you can test a hi-fi and see if those speakers are reproducing it faithfully or not. And maybe that's just because I've listened to that album so many times that I know how, as a reference track, I want certain songs to sound. But to the point where I can tweak a hi-fi just based on a couple of those tracks and go, okay, I know how I need to move the speakers now to make it sound better.
Yeah.
So yeah,
man, that's so true, because it is sonically beautiful as an album, isn't it? Not just the songs and the performances. Sonically, it's beautiful.
It is. Yeah. It's really nice, and it gives that sense of it's the track that it's the album that I use to test live recordings and sound staging. Yeah. It's really good, really cool.
Right, man.
Great choice, buddy.
Hit it. Number 2, please.
Okay, so you said that your last track was the one that got you into playing guitar, and Eric Clapton's Unplugged did get me playing more guitar, but it wasn't the album that got me playing guitar. And this album was, and you're going to go, wow, that's quite a radical one to start playing guitar to. But there's so much that I like about this album. And it came at a point in my life where up until that point, I'd been predominantly listening to, not a bad thing, but I'd been predominantly listening to overt pop music. I was a huge Michael Jackson fan, Phil Collins fan, just kind of tried and tested 80s kind of pop music by great artists nonetheless. But this was an awakening album for me in the early 90s, 1991, I believe. And that's Metallica's Black Album. And it came out under this I'd heard of Metallica up until that point, but I was a young kid, right, still. So I hadn't really accessed their back catalogue at that point. I've been listening to mostly pop music, as I said. But this album came out and it was a more mainstream album for them. So then you started getting the MTV music videos that were some of the more iconic videos in themselves. And then this album, the reason I really accessed it and fell in love with it was because it it also was released, I don't know if at the same time, but shortly afterwards with a making of documentary called A Year and a Half in the Life of Metallica. And it documents every single step of the journey of them creating that album, figuring out their guitar tones in the studio, the arrangements of these songs, working with a producer, struggling to write guitar solos, and then getting to the point where they're mastering it and then starting to perform it live, and it goes into shops. And that whole end-to-end process of watching an album go from ideas on a tape recorder to arguments in a studio to agonizing over how this song should be and what it should eventually turn out to look like, to then watching it be played on world stages and then knowing that these songs became epic in themselves. That, as a young kind of teenager, I was just like absolutely enamored with, to the point where I was like, I want to play guitar. And all that I had access to at the time, was a nylon strung classical guitar that I'd learned a couple of very basic fingerstyle classical pieces to, but then it sat in the corner like most kids. It kind of didn't inspire me at that point. And one of my friends, who was a very good guitarist even at that age, had the tab book. There was no YouTube videos. There was no online learning or instruction or anything like that. He had the tab, official tab book of the Metallica Black Album. So I had that. I had it on CD because I had a CD player by then. And I had this nylon strung classical guitar. And I learned how to read tab with that book, and learned how to play guitar by going through track by track and just learning it on a nylon strung guitar. And it was tough, but it was equally rewarding as well. And I remember just spending hours and hours and hours and days plodding through, trying to figure out how tab worked, and pausing on the CD player to get little bits of it. And obviously there's only so far you can get on an acoustic nylon strung guitar with it. It was good fun nonetheless. Yeah.
I love that. Do you remember the feeling of finally nailing something that you had been trying to copy just by ear or from tab, and just thinking it doesn't sound like the album yet, and then you'd get it? It's like the feeling was unbelievable, wasn't it? It's like you're discovering something for the first time. It's
for sure, man. And there's a track on that album which is probably my favorite track of the album, which is called The Unforgiven, and that has as its intro this fingerstyle repeating motif, I think, over it's like a minor type arpeggio thing. And that is, I think, played on the original album on a nylon strung classical before the big heavy riffs kick in. So that track, and having had a very rudimentary introduction to fingerstyle classical guitar playing, enabled me to then access that song, or at least the intro of it, and have that moment that you're talking about where I was like, oh, I'm playing something and it sounds like what's on the CD, and I kind of get how to play it because I my fingers had practiced that kind of technique a little bit. Yeah. So, and then the rest was just like, okay, wow, feed me more, give me more. What else can I do? Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a great choice, man. I love that album too. That's fantastic. There's so many epic rock tracks on there, so many great riffs, great guitar solos on there. Yeah, man, fantastic. None more black.
Bob Rock
than the Black
Bob
album.
Rock producer again.
Bob Rock, exactly. Yeah. Turn the bass guitar down a bit too much, maybe, but that was the big thing.
That's a whole different story. That's a whole different story.
You could write a book on the arguments, couldn't you, about that over the years? Jason Newsted, wasn't it? Hated the fact that you couldn't use the bass guitar on.
I know.
Well, maybe he didn't.
Well, then there's the follow-up documentary, isn't there, called Some Kind of Monster, which is obviously decades later. But that, if you haven't watched it, dear listeners, it's on Netflix. But again, that's a great documentary just to watch, like, auditioning a new bass player for the world-renowned Metallica and integrating them and that whole band story, and the decades after the Black album. I'm gonna have to watch that again. It's a great documentary.
I've seen that. It's cracking. Okay, dude.
It's cool, man. Nice. Let's move on.
Well, next one for me couldn't be further away from Metallica if you try. But it's one of my favourite albums of all time. I love listening to this. It's The Royal Scam by Steely Dan. It's just incredible as an album. Not just from a performance point of view. The songs are just immense. Everything is, again, everything's really high in information, harmonically, instrumentation wise, the sounds, the choices of instruments, the way everything's produced. It's so full of information, and yet every song is full of hook after hook after hook. And it just makes it actually, sometimes listen to it and it makes me sad that mainstream music isn't like this anymore, because I think mainstream music, I think panders to people a little bit too much. I think most mainstream music is the same 3-4 chord sequences thrown together, 3 minutes, on the radio, make some money, be popular. It's more trying to appeal to everyone, and I think that's not fair. I think people can take more than that. Most people can, if you can enjoy listening to Stevie Wonder, then you can enjoy listening to more complex music than what's being fed to you on the radio now. And because he was so great at doing complex things. And this is the same with the Royal Scam. It's so high on harmonic information, and yet there's great performances, poetic lyrics everywhere, funny lyrics, dark lyrics. Everything's really, really excellent. Great guitar solos all over the album. Maybe the greatest guitar solo of all time, from Kid Charlemagne, Larry Carlton. Don't Take Me Alive, Haitian Divorce is fantastic. That's Dean Parks. Caves of Altamira has got a fantastic sax solo in it, and the groove is ridiculous. The list of personnel on this album reads like a Session Musicians Hall of Fame from the 70s. Michael McDonald, Larry Carlton, Dean Parks, Elliot Randall, Chuck Rainey, Bernard Purdy, Timothy B. Schmidt before he joined the Eagles, Rick Marotta, and that's just basically drums, bass, and guitar. And Michael McDonald a bit of backing vocals. There's probably twice as many as that of other legendary session players who are on horns and things like that. It's possibly a perfect album for me. It's so beautifully produced. The songs, I love all of them. Again, another one. I could listen to that album front to back, no problem. Not skipping a thing. It's perfect.
Mate, I need to do that. That's why I love these conversations. Kid Charlemagne, obviously, I know. But actually, this album, there's so many tracks you've mentioned that I'm like, oh, I think I know that one, or maybe I don't. And so that's one that I'm just going to go and listen to. I mean, that's it from you. That's a glowing recommendation. There's an album that you can sit and listen to from start to finish. And I do know some other Steely Dan albums better than this one. And they do have that challenge that they've set themselves of trying to integrate what is almost kind of like complex kind of jazz stuff, but with rock in a way that is engaging and musical. And it's equally challenging and rewarding to listen to, because it makes you, for me, it makes me concentrate when I'm listening, but in a good way. It's not stuff I would just have on in the background. I don't think it's stuff that I just, when I'm in the mood for listening to something and being entertained, that's the kind of stuff that these guys churn out. And I agree with you. There needs to be more space for that kind of stuff. But I guess, for some people, it's too much. It's too complex to kind of get their heads around. When I put some stuff like that on, and Toto stuff and some of the Tedeschi Truck stuff and things like that, my wife immediately comments, she's like, I love your music taste, but some stuff is just like, it's just for musicians only, because this is just too, it's too intricate. It's too much.
Yeah,
and
good. Really? Good. It's for us only. So? We're in that special club.
I don't hear it. I don't hear that. I'm like, good, get out. Close the door. I'm listening.
Off you go.
So put the kettle on. That's an insight into my marriage. Sorry, man. Right.
Let's pick up some speed. Let's get through these last few.
Let's
in the next 10.
Let's.
Cool. Right. What's next for you?
Well, I'm gonna bucket my next two together then, because they sit under a theme of, for me, chasing tone and tracks that are huge bookmarks in my life in equal measure, right? Yeah. But probably more about chasing tone.
Okay.
I would say. Okay. So the next two albums that I have spent a lifetime just feeling so emotive about the guitar tones on these albums. One is Appetite for Destruction, obviously by Guns N' Roses, amazing. And the other is Texas Flood by Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly two different genres. But I think arguably for me, the quintessential representation of those genres, like all out rock, for me is Appetite for Destruction, a JCM 800 or Silver Jubilee Marshall cranked to breaking point with a Les Paul, driving it. Incredible riffs, incredible motifs, like evergreen songs that still to this day that, when we cover them in a band or whatever, the crowd goes nuts for it. People still love these songs decades later. My son's, as you know, playing guitar and he's just devouring the back catalogue of Guns N' Roses, but this album is just on constant repeat in his room because he just loves it, and that says something. I mean, obviously, I've introduced him to it, but I haven't forced it on him, and I listened to such a range of stuff. He's picked it for himself and gone, there's something in this album that I love, and all those rock songs are just amazing quintessential rock songs. But it's that guitar tone. It is that no nonsense, fairly simplistic rig, and just that focus on all out rock that I love about that album. And Texas Flood, similar comments. Right, for me, the quintessential blues album, like debut album of this blues trio out of Texas with this now legendary blues artist who sadly no longer with us, but had left this legend of, some of it might be complete kind of urban legend, but, played 13s on a Strat with a high action and these wound up, supposedly clean amps like the Bassman that he drove with a tube screamer. That I've never been able to get a tube screamer to do something like that. And just the bends and the visceral playing. And just for me, it's still electric listening to Texas Flood, even though it is 12-bar blues. Right? I mean, it couldn't get, as a juxtaposition to what we just talked about with Steely Dan, it couldn't get more simplistic, and yet the whole album of effectively 12-bar blues numbers, with maybe the exception of Lenny, which takes a bit of a departure into a more melodic, ambient kind of thing. It's 12, but it's just visceral 12-bar blues, track after track after track, and yet each one sounds fresh and different. And the guitar tone, man. How many guitar players globally chase Stevie Ray's tone on that album?
You have to be Stevie Ray to get that tone. And this is the worst thing. People will spend all their lives trying to chase the right rig and everything to get Stevie's tone. And yet you could probably hand Stevie a Squier Strat and a Marshall Valstate and he'll sound closer, because it's just in True him. Enough. That album is an outpouring. That's what I love about Texas Flood. It's this outpouring of, this is my first album. I've got this choice to do it. Just all this stuff I've been doing since I was a kid and going out gigging and putting my own band together. I'm going to pour it out onto this album. It is just incredible. Again, another one I wish I had in my list as well, maybe. It is awesome. Good choices too.
It was a tough choice. It was a tough choice between From the Cradle and Texas Flood, but in terms of the biggest impact on my life and my playing was Texas Flood, for sure. Yeah. For sure. As well as Appetite and all those rock riffs and I walked down the aisle to Sweet Child of Mine, albeit an acoustic, beautiful ambient arrangement of it. So that song keeps coming back time and time again, and every weekend with my band playing it live. And so
fantastic.
Two great albums about chasing tone for me there.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Right, I'm gonna bunch my last two together. You've still got another one after that, haven't you?
I've got one more left. Yeah.
Right, okay. So last two for me: Van Halen 2, the second Van Halen album. Again, main reason, it's quite nostalgic for me because we used to play that in the music store that I worked in on Saturdays when I was younger. That used to get played front to back on repeat all the time, mainly because I think it's the only thing he had in the shop at the time. But it was awesome. I used to love listening to that. Just this raw rock performance. There's some overdubs in there, but in general, it's basically a live album. I think it's Dave Lee Roth's best vocals ever on an album for me. Absolutely incendiary singing and one of the best rock voices of all time. I think it's the best Van Halen record for me, but other people will disagree. Some people prefer later Van Halen, some of the more complex stuff, some of the darker stuff, but that was their best for me. That was off the back of their first album, but there's still that young band waiting for success kind of thing. The Marshall tone from Van Halen, just unbelievable. Favourite songs.
Was it a plexi? Was it a jumped plexi that he used?
Which we used a variac to reduce the voltage going into the amp, so that everything saturated sooner because it had less headroom. The end circuit had less headroom, but it would kill the valves quicker. So he would be changing valves almost every gig.
Who cares, man? That's rock and roll. No, you couldn't. Valves are too expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, again, get a modeler. But still, favourite songs. No vowels in the
It's not even subliminal anymore. It's just shouting at people. Get a modeler. Get a modeler.
Yeah. Favourite songs for me: Dance the Night Away, Light Up the Sky, Somebody Get Me a Doctor. Nice. Just amazing tracks. And then number 5 for me is Abbey Road by the Beatles.
Of course.
I think it's their best album, pound for pound. I think also the great thing about it is McCartney and Harrison at their best. Harrison, I think, only wrote 2 songs for the Beatles, or only had 2, and they're both on that album, Something in the Way She Moves and Here Comes the Sun. And I think they're 2 of the most downloaded. I mean, Here Comes the Sun has over 1 billion listens on Spotify.
Beautiful song.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Some of my favourite bass playing ever. McCartney's in the pocket so much with his bass playing. Next time you listen to Abbey Road, if you've got it on vinyl or anything, and you sit at home and you think, I'm going to listen to Abbey Road, just tune in to the bass. Just think, I'm going to listen to Paul McCartney's bass playing. You'll be stunned. He's in the pocket with Ringo all the time. It's amazing. I think it's their best album lyrically. I think, favourite songs are probably just like the entire second side or the last side, which is like the medley, because like all the last 5 or 6 songs from Abbey Road pretty much just run as a medley, one into the other. Like Sun King, Mean Mr. Mustard, Polythene Pam, She Came In Through the Bathroom Window, Golden Slumbers, Carry That Away. In the end, all those songs, they run into each other as a medley. And if you just listen to that whole thing through, it's fantastic. That's just another album, again, I could listen to front to back, no problem. Starts with Come Together. And Come Together, if you remember, whenever we used to play Come Together in Roadrunner, or if you play it now, the guitar's playing the riff, right? You're playing doom, doom, doodle, doo. Yeah. It doesn't. That's not the album. It's McCartney.
It's bass.
McCartney's playing the riff. He's carrying the hook.
Yeah, it's bass.
Do you know what? Yeah. And the only other song that I can think of where the bass guitar plays the hook is Ain't No Doubt by Jimmy Nail. Do you remember that song?
We can't use those 2 songs in the same sentence. There's no,
you can't. But it's the only other song I can think of where it's the bass guitar.
Oh no! There's the what's that one with? I don't know if it's the actual hook now, so I might go down a wrong alleyway with this one. What's that Pino Palladino track that he played for? That pop song, Wherever I Lay My Hat. Yeah,
there's that one. And also Paul Young's, it was Paul Young, wasn't it? And he also did, what was the other one? I don't know. I can't remember the name of the song. I have to look at it. But yeah, Pino Palladino in the 80s with his fretless bass.
That's right. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Wherever I Lay My Hat. Every Time You Go Away as well. That was it. Every Time You Go Away. There we go. But anyway, mate, that's my albums. And you've got a minute to talk about your last album.
I'm going to do it in 30 seconds, buddy. So this one is for me one that I am still discovering. And it's one that I'm going to take with me as one which I have a feeling is going to be with me for the rest of my life, because it is that good. And it has special memories for me as well already. And the album is Maverick, the deluxe edition by King.
Oh, man.
Which I just can't stop listening to at the moment. Yeah. It's been my album of this year, even though it came out a couple of years ago. But as I said, I'm still discovering tracks on it and accessing them, in early listening and just going, oh man, this is such a great song. I've been a fan of the Nemo brothers and Alan Nemo for a while, and King. I've seen King live a number of times. I mean, this is like their 5th album or 6th album or something like that. Yeah. I forget the number, but we're well into their catalogue now. But this one for me is a real culmination of incredible guitar playing, mature musicianship and songwriting, not being afraid to take a bit of a departure from out and out blues stuff and write some really genuine pop rock blues songs, which, mixing all of that in a great way is ticking all my boxes. Guitar tone for days, It's got a fond memory that it's one of the first gigs that I went to post-COVID lockdown and got to go there with you, mate,
absolutely.
and Damo. And it was an amazing night, an amazing venue, and the musicianship live was every bit, worth waiting to go out after COVID and see a gig. So, yeah, man, I just think it's a great, great album with some beautiful tracks on it. So go and listen to Maverick King, but that's coming to the island with me, buddy.
They're so good. They're the best they've ever been. They're so mature now. That album is absolutely beautifully produced. I like that album as well, Maverick. I've got that in my collection on Spotify as like one of my go-to albums as well. I think it's fantastic. That's a great choice. I didn't expect that as well. I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe because they're not up there in the mainstream, but absolutely still an incredible album, beautifully produced and a great performance. Again, the sound of people in a room playing instruments together, feeding in off each other, and yeah, man, fantastic choice. Excellent stuff.
What a great chat today. I've loved it, man. And you know what? It's given me something to do this evening.
Yeah.
Sit down and go through some of your choices and go, oh yeah, he was right. That's a great album.
I mean, grab yourself a single malt, sit down, or a rum or whatever, and enjoy a bit of Steely Dan later on, and just, check out some of the performances. It's like the second track, Caves of Altamira. It's all about the groove. Bernard Purdy's drumming on that is absolutely just ridiculous. Just so good. Just grooving. Just fantastic track. And I think if you, all our listeners as well, go and check these albums out if you haven't listened to them before. You might find something that you love for years to come. So enjoy. And also come to the Guitar Geek hangout and tell us what your 5 Desert Island discs are as well. So maybe we can find some new ones to love also.
Great idea. Love that. Brilliant, mate. Well, I'll see you soon, my friend. I've really enjoyed today.
Absolutely. Me too, mate. Anyway, all the best, buddy. Take care of yourself. See you on the next one. Thanks so much for listening. If you like what you hear, then why not give the rest of our shows a good listen too? And if you love our podcast and are a regular listener who wants to support the show even more, consider buying us a coffee over on our Buy Me a Coffee page. Anyway, best wishes. See you next time on the Guitar Sparks podcast.